the people who are going to survive, who are here to really have a successful business, the people who want that, building a brand is a non-negotiable. When it comes to growing your audience and building your list and building your business, you have to make the goal consistency and not the end result of a certain amount of numbers. He could have a landing page that has 2 sentences on it and people would sign up for it. How you create a brand is you got to be clear on that. You've got to be clear on the foundation, your values, what you stand for, your mission, why you're here. And it's not, you're just here to make money. There are so many talented entrepreneurs that hold themselves back because they play this small solopreneur game. Embodied CEOs don't chase trends. They pave the way. They lead from within, moved by purpose, unshaken by noise. When you are the source, you do not need permission. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. I'm actually feeling a little spicy. I think my energy today is like, I'm crushing it. We don't have our nanny for most of this week. She got some time off after our trip. She came with us. So my husband and I make a killer team when in these situations. And my job is really the coordination of a lot of it. And so I've got no nanny this week, a ton happening in the business, a lot of people needing my time this week in terms of meetings and coaching calls and just things I owe from being gone. So my calendar is pretty busy. I've got my training, 2-ish hours a day, podcast recording, podcast guests, webinar, and we're back in full on activity season. If you are parents of, middle-aged kids, my kids are 5, 8, and 10. And so they're all in activities. And my daughter loves being in multiple activities. And I love that for them because they homeschool. So their activities, we get to put a lot of energy into. So tonight we have each kid in a separate activity at the same exact time. So I feel like the air traffic controller of my family today, and like everything's got to be perfectly timed. And I've got my shift with the kids and got to help with the house, and then we switch. Anyways, I'm feeling fired up because I'm freaking crushing this day. I'm crushing it, all the things. So we're going to have some real talk about what I think is so important in business, and I'm going to call some things out. If you're in the online space and you follow Alex Hormozi, you probably saw his massive launch that he did a few weeks ago where he did $100 million in a weekend. And I'm not going to dissect what he did and, the pitch. There's going to be plenty of that online, but also I'll say this. He can do whatever he wants and still do really well because of this one thing that we're going to talk about today. That's what I want to focus on because that's what I think is the biggest takeaway. It was iconic, right? $100 million in a weekend, the level of energy output that you could tell from their team, from him, from Layla, incredible, well-deserved. They are definitely really iconic entrepreneurs. I would never want their lifestyle. It's not my dream, but I think it's their dream. And I think a lot of people like to kind of shit on how much they work. And it's like, they're in their purpose. That's what they want to do. And that could change, but that is what they want to do. And there's no reason to judge that. And also you don't have to be just like that. Like you're creating your dream. So I want to talk about the biggest takeaway that I have from watching this, because I've already had people go, what did he do? Let's look at the pitch. Let's look at the campaign. Let's replicate his launch strategy. And his pitch was brilliant. It was buy 200 of his books and you got all these bonuses for doing that. And then you could give away the books. And his ultimate goal was to sell as many books as possible. So it was really innovative, smart way to do that. And when you look at his pitch, it was a digital marketing pitch. I didn't watch the whole, his on for like 8 hours. I've watched some of it. I've talked to friends who watched a lot of it. It was a perfect webinar pitch, which I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing, honestly. Like, I wish he got innovated a little bit, but I don't think he needs to. So my takeaway from this, and I recently, I had a client this week go, what about the Alex Hormozi funnel template? And my response was, Alex Hormozi could write 2 sentences on a landing page and get people to sign up. He could host a webinar tomorrow and have thousands of people on it with very little effort. Why? Because he has a personal brand, because he understands that attention is currency. And I think that is the biggest takeaway you can take from this is Alex and Layla Hormozi have spent years, I think like 4 to 5 now, of showing up at a very high volume, a very high investment in terms of their money, resources in their business, their time that they put into it, and creating very valuable at a very high volume of content. And what that content does is it's built their brand. It's built his following on YouTube, on Instagram, his podcast, people consuming his content, his email list all over the place. And he has given a ton for free, a ton. That's all he used to do. He used to say, like, I'm Alex Hormozi and I don't have anything to sell you. So he's got a brand that everything becomes so easy when you have this and you realize the time put into building a brand is invaluable because you can do whatever you want with it. And I think that people don't understand. I kind of hope that he does something that fully represents everything that went into the launch, because you can look at the $100 million weekend and be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I'm actually imagine making $100 million in a weekend. It's hard to like wrap your head around. He's got a large expense that was required to make that happen. I think I saw somewhere that he was spending up to $500,000 a day on ads for this launch. So here's what I want to call out and what I want to say. And I hope this comes from a loving place. It is coming from a loving place. I hope it's perceived from a loving place. I know Alex's personality because I was in inner circle with him. I used to hang out with Alex and Layla. They're too cool for me now. I don't think that I would call them friends now, not because anything happened, but just because they got really big. They moved away from Austin and we don't stay in contact. But I've hung out with him enough to understand his personality. And Alex takes risks. He is an all-in guy. He's very innovative. He wants to do it different than everybody else. And he's brilliant. So when he decides, like, I'm going to become a content creator, I'm going to build a personal brand, he went all in. Like, look at what he's done in the last 4 years. I don't think there's anybody else out there creating the volume and the quality and the consistency of content like he is. And you've got to look at that. So there are people who look at it and say, I want a $100 million weekend, but I'm going to be honest with you, they're not willing to go all in at that level, or they can't. So you've got to adjust your expectations. But he went all in. He plays the long game. He's got patience like I've never seen of building something. So many entrepreneurs today want it tomorrow, this week, next month. And there's just a lot of like, I want to say immaturity in the online business space of the lack of patience. I tried this for a week, I tried this for a month, and it didn't work. And here's kind of my thoughts moving forward online and in business is the people who are going to survive, the people who are going to be here for the next 10 plus years, who are here to truly make an impact in their space, who are here to really have a successful business, meaning multiple 7 figures, 8 figures if you want it, and a real business that runs with systems, that runs with team, that runs in a large capacity so that the impact can be felt greater, so that the CEO can elevate themselves and show up in that capacity of the ultimate, their skill set, their wisdom, and be supported. The people who want that, building a brand, and we're going to talk about what that means. Building a brand is a non-negotiable. Building a brand has to be such a huge priority for you. The long game and patience is going to be very important, seeing how all the parts fit together and being willing to wait for things to start working, seeing that long game. Consistency being the goal. I've said this for so long. When it comes to growing your audience and building your list and building your business, You have to make the goal consistency and not the end result of a certain amount of numbers. Yeah, you want to see it growing. You want to see the numbers go up. But the most important thing is the consistency. It's how frequently am I showing up? Do I have leads growing on my list every single day? All of those things combined created his success. And it's like, I also think people look at it and they're like, let's pull out the hacks and the tricky things he did in his pitch and use this. And it honestly, anybody can do what Alex did. Alex leveraged his expertise and his brilliance in very strategic ways, but it came down to the consistency, the building of a brand, and creating the irresistible offer. Every single one of you, and myself included, can do that. There's no trick. There's no hack. There's no secret. The secret is out there. It's just most of us are not willing to put in that level of time. And even I look at myself like, no, I'm not investing the level of resources that he has in media and content and production, nor the level of time that he does. And I'm okay with that, but I know what levers I'm going to need to pull to get to the next level. So let's talk about a brand. I think this is the most valuable thing we can all focus on. And when I say building a brand, I do not mean your font and your colors and, what your social media pictures look like and like the visual aesthetics and things that people think of when they say a brand. I more so mean the movement, the emotional connection to you, the values, the statements, the beliefs that if someone goes, oh, XYZ name, there's associations to it, right? When I say Alex Hormozi to a lot of people, I recognize some of you on here may not know him, which is interesting, right? Like he just made $100 million and there's people who don't even know who he is. When someone says his name, you have an instant correlation to what he stands for, to his teachings, to his experience, to his expertise, to his beliefs, and you love or hate him, right? He's polarizing. He will purposely say polarizing things on social media to attract people. And so he's built a brand, and Layla and him have built a brand that is got this very elevated feel to it, very high level business, straight to the point, valuable advice, cut through the noise, tell it to you how it is, love us or hate us, we love to work, grow or die type of mentality. And people love them for that and people trust them for that. And so therefore, because they build this brand and they put in so much time and years of building this brand that has compounded, they can run a launch like this where they make $100 million in a weekend. Because literally, he could have a landing page that has 2 sentences on it and people would sign up for it. Or an offer that his offer was great. I mean, it was stacked with value. Still, I think he could have had an okay offer and people would buy it because they trust him. That trust, that connection, that association with him as a person and that brand is the most valuable thing that any business can focus on. So how do you focus on it? You work backwards. First, you've got to be clear on who you are. I just had Sarah on the podcast who we talked about branding and how it starts with your values and your beliefs and your mission and what you're here to do. I remember Layla saying when they started this side of the company, which is their media and their content, they sat down and they wrote out their values and they spent a lot of time deciding on their company values. I remember it was like a piece of content, or she either told me that or it was a piece of content. And they sat down and they decided their values and they spent hours, Alex and her, getting clear on the values and the mission of this new company. That's what dictated the brand. That's what dictated their hiring and their content and everything they've done since. So how you create a brand is you got to be clear on that. You've got to be clear on the foundation, your values, what you stand for, your mission, why you're here. And it's not, you're just here to make money. I can promise you that the business owners who are like, I'm just here to make money, you're not going to thrive. Money's a byproduct. Money is a byproduct of selling. It's a byproduct of serving. It's a byproduct of impact. It's a scorecard Are we doing well with our impact? Is it allowing us to continue to have our impact? It's not why you are here. Money is a tool and a byproduct. Why are you here? What are those values? What's that authenticity? And you come up with authenticity through what you stand for. That's how you become authentic. The more you can step into, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up, the more authentic you're able to be in your content. So you start with that, and then you create and you create and you show up consistently. And I don't mean like, okay, now overwhelm yourself with creating endless amounts of social media. You've got to meet yourself with where you're at. And if you are somebody who is all by yourself in your business, you don't have support and you can't get support yet, you've got to do the highest leverage things to bring in income so that you can get support so you can expand your reach. And I can promise you, when Alex started this business, he had money. He had just sold his company. So he invested in support, a lot of content, a lot of marketing support. And that's where he was able to start from. I guarantee you, if you go all the way back to his first business, and I know this is his story, he was doing the sales call. He was doing everything, right? But he was leveraging, him and Layla were leveraging the highest leverage things to be able to make sales, to make that money, to build off of that. And then they did it. Layla's an incredible leader when it comes to operations and team, and they built a massive team. They're not afraid to take risks in getting themselves out of the day-to-day, out of the low leverage tasks, out of in hiring people. So I love to study like the journey that got them there. Not necessarily, I could care less about the 8-hour webinar that he did and the structure of it, because I think you are wasting your time trying to pick that apart. Let's talk about what allowed him to get hundreds of thousands of people signed up for a webinar and then like 80 something thousand people on live. Because if you have thousands of people watching you live and you've got a good offer, sales are easy. Like, so easy. So let's look at what led to that, which is all of these things. The consistency. So when you look at your brand, I think something that you could do today is ask yourself, if I was to look at my brand as if someone just came across my content and me today, or even talk to me, right? And talk to me about the industry that I served, would I stand out? Like, after you talk to me, what would people say if they said your name in a room? What would they say represents you? And I think about this sometimes, like after I go to an event or someone who listens to this podcast and is describing me to somebody else, and I'm describing Alex right now, right? Like, what is that perception of me? And does it represent me and my values and the company and the brand and the mission and the movement and all the things that I'm here to do? And if it doesn't, then my branding's not clear enough. I think that it does. And I think that my messaging is very clear in who I am. And so that's where you start. And then you start creating consistently from that, but meeting yourself where you're at. So what does that look like? Is it one time a week, a piece of solid, valuable content? I know I talk a lot about like not creating endless amounts of content as a strategy, and I do believe that. However, I think when you have all the pieces together in your marketing, meaning you are growing your audience, you are generating leads, and you're turning those into sales. A piece of that is content, but not from this is going to massively grow your business standpoint. That's what I think people get wrong with content, is they think the more I post on social media, the more new people I'm going to find, and then my business will grow. So if I just keep posting and I just keep creating, it's going to grow. That's what I disagree with. I think content creation is a nurture strategy. Yes, it's a growth strategy, but it's not a primary growth strategy. My primary growth strategy is my ads. My secondary growth strategy is my content, sure. But I more so, like, the reason I have this podcast, yes, I want to grow it, but I want to create a relationship with you week after week, because someone who consumes my content is watching me, is listening to me. You have a relationship with me. And then when I talk about a new offer or something we're doing for free or an event, it's easy to get you to sign up because you have that relationship. So what does your consistent content creation look like? And as you grow your business, how can you create at a higher leverage, meaning higher volume of content in a way that doesn't burn you out? How can you invest in that? Because if we study what Alex did the last 4 years, he's created a very high volume of content. YouTube videos, podcasts, very well done social videos, not meaning overly produced, good content, shareable, triggering, really good content. He's also been on a ton of big podcasts to grow his audience and grow and create his leverage. So if we look at that and we say, okay, where you're at in your business today, what does your focus look like on your brand? On having a message, having a mission that is so clear that you continually, week after week, no matter what, create connection points, even if it's one time a week. And then how do you grow that? So for me right now, after I went to my peer-led mastermind back in, I don't even know what month. I'm like, I almost said December. No, that's the next one. I think it was July. When I went to that mastermind and we heard Dan Martell speak, and he talked about media and content and how he made a decision to go pro, he called it, and really invest in content and get a studio and somebody who is going to be in charge of his content. I think he's very much done what Alex Hormozi has done, and he's grown tremendously. I mean, he didn't do $100 million in a weekend, but he's got a valuation of maybe more than that, like incredible different companies. And he did that, right? He built the media, and he said the media is the most valuable thing. It's a moat around you that nobody can touch. Because when you have that audience and you have that following, and I'm not talking about the numbers on Instagram, I'm talking about the actual people who engage and care about what you have to say, want to hear what you have to say, get value from what you have to say because you put the time and energy into that and deliver that. You're creating a moat around you that nobody can touch, which I think is so true. No matter what happens in the industry, in the market, in the economy, you serve those people, you're always going to be fine. And so after he said that, I came back and we're prioritizing that. We're prioritizing that in terms of company resources and investment and hiring more support and up-leveling, potentially upgrading to a bigger studio, more content creation for me, growing and up-leveling this podcast and investing in that resource because I believe that's the long game. And you don't get to go, oh, I started recording videos last month and posting them once a week on social media and it made me this much money. And I think that's where people get confused with content. It's not your number one growth strategy. I don't think it should be. It's there for you to be consistent with where you're at today. How can you be consistent in showing up and creating content? But the goal is the consistency because you don't know who's consuming your content and who's behind the scenes on the fence of buying and going to buy the next time you put it out there. So it's hard to tie numbers to it. But building a brand, a standout, authentic, innovative, disruptive brand, you can't go wrong. It will allow you and open up so many opportunities. And I forget if I said this on the podcast or not, but Dan said when he went to talk to us that if he knew just the level of talent that building the media and the brand would have created for him, just alone that benefit, he would have done it a long time ago because of the hiring and the amount of talent he now could find on his team just because of the media and the brand. So how are you prioritizing your brand? And I said this was going to be a little spicy because here's what I think. I understand like everybody has to start somewhere and you've got to meet yourself with where you're at. But I think there are so many talented entrepreneurs with offers and the ability to change their industry and go so big with what they have that hold themselves back because they play this small solopreneur game. And then they compare themselves to people like Alex Hormozi or Amy Porterfield and these big names, Russell Brunson. And they're looking at the wrong things. They're looking at how do I copy Alex's launch strategy and his webinar and his emails and do that myself. Like, no, you gotta do what he did the last 4 years. That's what allowed that to be possible. Then who gives a crap what says on his landing page? Like, that's not what it's about. It's the investment of time, energy, and money that he's spent the last 4 years building the brand and how big he decided to play that allowed the $100 million. He played so big on the content creation and the brand development and growing the list and growing the audience and growing that brand that he then unlocked the ability for that weekend. And sure, there were strategies I'm sure they did that weekend that played a part in it, but it wasn't like, oh, he did some secret thing that now if we do, we're going to be successful. And I guarantee you there's going to be people who now come out and copy his launch strategy. And it's like, you're missing the point. And I see a lot of people, so many who hold themselves back because they play it small. And I'll tell you what, Alex does not play it small because I know him. I've been at dinner with him. And the second he has clarity on what he is going to go do, and he's not afraid to take the risk. He's not afraid to go all in. He plays it big. And so do other people I look up to, like Dan Martell, same thing, right? If you have that fear of investing in support, investing in the next level, becoming that CEO of the next level, you will constantly stay stuck. So takeaway from this is how important building a brand, a movement, being disruptive, building that media, that following, but do not take that as number of social media followers around you, not as a primary growth strategy, but as a nurture, standout, long game strategy. And if you commit to that for like the next 2 to 3 years, like really commit to it and go all in, I can pretty much guarantee you that you'll grow your business. And so if you know that these are the things to grow your business, you have no reason not to do them. It's same thing with like losing weight. It's like eating healthy is actually really simple. It's not that hard, but people have such a hard time doing it because they don't want to do it because it's not fun, and look for all these other hacks that they can do, right? That's why the weight loss industry is so big. Look for all these other hacks when it's like, all you have to do is just eat healthy and not eat processed food and you'll lose weight. But that's too hard for people. And it's like in business, all you have to do is grow your audience, generate leads, deliver a valuable offer to them, do that through very clear messaging, have very clear brand values, have a clear mission, get clear on that yourself, and commit to the long game and be all in no matter what bumps, no matter what challenges come up, all in. And it's literally that simple. So instead of studying the launch of Alex Hormozi and the $100 million he made and thinking it came from that webinar, I know the webinar was the mechanism that sold it, but what allowed him to have that weekend was the last 4 years of building his brand and the game he played at the level he played. There's nobody else out there creating at his level. Guarantee it. And that's how he did it. You can do it too, right? Like if you invest in that. Last thing I'll say is this. I caught this post of his, I don't know, a couple months back where maybe it was even like a couple months back where he said there was like a rating of popularity or something. And it was rating like Hollywood celebrities, influencers, and then live streamers. And the study showed that the live streamers had the most popularity. And Alex made a comment about how that made sense because people are watching those people for hours at a time. Like I don't know them very well, but it's like the Twitch video game live streamers are like the most famous, above Hollywood celebrities and above influencers. And he made a comment about how that's so fascinating. And it's probably because, they're in real time, right? There's no editing. It's live. You're seeing their full real personality. It's like unfiltered, authentic. And it's also long periods of time that you're watching them. So I found it really interesting that in his launch, he stayed live for so long. I think he was capitalizing on that. Like, you're going to get him for 8 hours if you wanted to in this time. And what I think about is the relationship he's built with those people who stayed on the entire time, or even for like 2 or 3 hours watching him. And yeah, they might have bought, they might not have bought, but like the relationship building and the richness of that he created in his launch is pretty incredible. To have the attention of someone for that long, or even for a portion of that time. I think we're in a time where truly, like, those live streamers and influencers and people online who have these communities are becoming more famous than Hollywood actors. Like, people have deeper connections to people like that than Hollywood actors. And I think if you would have asked someone, 20 years ago, would you rather meet Alex Hormozi, let's say he had the same fame, or Jennifer Aniston, people would go with the Hollywood actor. And I think today they would go the influencer route a lot of time, because the connection is deeper and it's authentic. When you think about actors, they're faking it. You don't really know who they really are. When you look at influencers and live streamers and people who show up in content like this, you really feel like you know them. You feel like you have a real relationship with them, and you do to an extent. And, I remember my dad listening. My dad loves Joe Rogan. And he's like, I feel like he's like my bud. Like, I listen to him all the time. I feel like I know him. Like, we're friends. And I think it's so fascinating, the time that we're in. And I think that's only going to grow. And so that content creation, that brand, that showing up, authenticity, but doing it from a place of the long game. That's, again, I want to make that clear. It's not your primary growth strategy, short-term growth strategy in your business, which is why you need ads. It's why you need leads coming into your email list in a funnel every day, because if you just rely on content, it'll be hard to be profitable. It's a long game, the content game. I do think it has a place and it's priority, but people look at it in the wrong way. All right, everybody. I hope you guys got some value out of this and you're thinking about this in different ways. And my goal was to put out a piece of content related to this for us to all learn from, that's not like everything else out there, which is analyzing the launch and what he did. And I'm like, yeah, but he could have done whatever he wanted and it still be successful because of the last 4 years. All right, everybody. Talk to you next time.